In this video, we're going to dive deep into 2 hours of Family Guy. What if Stewie finally killed Lois? Our journey into the depths of Family Guy's lore begins with the very first episode, where the true, unsettling nature of Stewie Griffin's desires for his mother, Lois, is laid bare for the very first time. From the earliest moments of the series, we witness the astonishing ambition of a 1-year-old child whose primary goal is nothing less than matricide. We first encounter Stewie in the kitchen, not as a typical baby, but as a tiny, focused engineer. He is meticulously working with a screwdriver on what he openly declares to be a mind control device, a blue and yellow ray gun that is, in his words, nearing completion. This isn't just a toy, it's a tool for his grand designs. Lois, however, sees only a child at the table with a plaything. With a casual dismissal, she takes the device from him, placing it on a high cabinet shelf, uttering the perfectly normal, yet utterly infuriating to Stewie, phrase, "Stewie, I said no toys at the table." Stewie's immediate response is anything but childish. His rage is articulate and profound. He curses her as a vile woman who has impeded his work since the very day he escaped from her wretched womb. He views his birth as a victory day, the fruition of deeply laid plans to break free from what he calls that cursed ovarian Bastille. He demands the device back, but Lois, completely oblivious to the gravity of his words, simply reiterates, "No toys, Stewie." It's a classic power dynamic, but with a deeply dark undertone. Stewie's chilling parting shot. Very well then. Mark my words. When you least expect it, your comeuppance will come. Is not a temper tantrum, but a promise. The show doesn't explain where a baby learns advanced engineering or procures such sophisticated weaponry, but it's clear his genius is innate, a dark gift. His pursuit of the mind control device continues. We see Stewie, with his face comically painted brown, using a grappling hook gun to retrieve the ray gun from the cabinet where Lois had placed it. He falls, but quickly recovers, shouting, "Victory is mine! Ah!" When Lois re-enters the kitchen, Stewie confronts her directly, mind control ray in hand. "Well, well, mother, we meet again." He then delivers his iconic, chilling declaration. "And now, you contemptible harpy, I shall end your oppressive reign of matriarchal tyranny." Again, Lois, completely missing the genuine menace in his words, simply takes the weapon, treating it as a toy, and carries him off to bed. "Oh, you can play with your toys tomorrow, honey. Right now, it's bedtime." As he's carried away, Stewie's final desperate cry of, "No, blast you and your estrogenical tyranny," perfectly encapsulates the core conflict of the series. This inaugural episode establishes the foundational dynamic of Stewie's existence. A brilliant, malevolent infant driven by an almost philosophical need for autonomy, constantly thwarted by his mother's unwitting domesticity. The irony is profound. His elaborate schemes and sophisticated threats are consistently dismissed as childish antics, which only fuels his frustration. This isn't just a running gag. It's the genesis of a deep, unsettling lore. Could Lois be subconsciously aware of Stewie's true nature, yet chooses to deny it? Or is her obliviousness so complete that it makes her the perfect, unsuspecting victim? This chapter is a stark reminder that from the very beginning, Stewie's desire to kill Lois wasn't a phase, but a deeply ingrained, defining characteristic. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button to help the channel grow. Now, let's continue. Stewie's obsession didn't stop there. His ambitions quickly escalated from simple mind control to grand, destructive schemes, showing a terrifying progression in his matricidal intent. Our journey continues with SO2-EZO2, an episode where Stewie's desire to eliminate Lois takes a truly ambitious and technologically advanced turn. We find the Griffin family at a rather bland Quahog Mariners banquet hall, a setting that provides a stark contrast to the dramatic events Stewie has planned. As his grandfather, Francis Griffin, delivers a typically angry and judgmental retirement speech, Stewie is seen at the table, smiling and clasping his hands together. He's not amused by the speech itself, but clearly reveling in the chaos and disruption it brings, perhaps a foreshadowing of the widespread chaos he intends to unleash. The real meat of Stewie's plot unfolds as the family drives home. Peter, distracted by his father's presence and general life frustrations, crashes the car. Everyone is surprisingly okay, but this chaotic event seems to spark an idea in Stewie's already devious mind. The episode then takes us into a moment where Peter and Lois peek into Stewie's nursery, only to find Francis reading the Holy Bible to the infant. It's a jarring image, a symbol of innocence overlaid with the sinister reality of Stewie's true nature. The next morning, the domestic chaos of the Griffin household is in full swing. Peter, in a fit of frustration, falls face first on the kitchen floor. It's during this mundane madness that Stewie begins to put his plan into motion. He's observed in the kitchen, not with a ray gun this time, but with a different kind of focus. The transcript doesn't detail his exact actions, but it's clear his mind is whirring, connecting the dots of his environment to his overarching goal. Later, we see Peter confronting his father, Francis, at the happy-go-lucky toy factory. Francis, a stern and religious man, eventually gets Peter fired. This familial conflict, while central to Peter's storyline, serves as a backdrop to Stewie's more sinister machinations. Peter, desperate to get his job back, eventually enlists the Pope's help to reconcile with Francis. It's a bizarre sequence of events, culminating in Peter bringing the Pope to the factory. In a moment of high drama, the Pope blesses Francis, and Francis finally admits he was wrong about Peter, even telling Peter he loves him, though still not liking him. However, amidst this family reconciliation, Stewie's own plot reaches its climax. With the family finally reunited and watching television, a knocking is heard from the attic door. Thelma's voice, Peter's mother, is heard, causing Brian to scream. This leads to the family running to the side of the house. Suddenly, a small, white, rocket-powered pod launches out of the side of the house, flying into space and exploding. This seemingly unrelated event is a critical moment for Stewie's grand scheme. While the specific details of why he launches this rocket from the house aren't explicitly detailed in the transcript, the implication is clear. This is an escape pod, a means for Stewie to remove himself from the vicinity of a planned, larger destruction. The absence of specific dialogue about his intent during this launch, or the target of the explosion, leaves a chilling ambiguity. Was this rocket meant to carry a bomb? Was it a diversion? Or was it an initial, perhaps flawed attempt at a much larger, more global destruction, with Lois implicitly as a target of its widespread impact? The fact that it launches from the side of the house, where the family is seen running, suggests a direct connection to his desire to be rid of his oppressive reign. The episode ends with the pod exploding in space, leaving us to wonder about the true scope of Stewie's ambition. This wasn't just about a ray gun. It was about aerial sabotage, about an escape plan, about a willingness to use extreme measures to achieve his goals. The subtle inclusion of this event within an episode focused on Peter's family drama highlights how Stewie's dark lore often operates in the background, a quiet, terrifying undercurrent to the show's more overt comedic plots. It's a reminder that even when the family is dealing with their own absurd problems, Stewie is always plotting. And his plots are not small. They are cosmic. Having seen Stewie's early, ambitious attempts at large-scale destruction, it becomes clear that his genius isn't limited to one type of weapon. In fact, he's a master of adapting to any situation, using whatever unconventional means are at his disposal to further his dark agenda. Our journey continues with SO2E05, an episode that highlights Stewie's cunning and inventive use of unconventional weaponry in his persistent pursuit of Lois. The episode opens with a news broadcast, a seemingly unrelated event involving Charlton Heston and doves, but it serves to ground us in the absurd reality of Quahog. As the family watches this strange news, Peter dances in front of the TV, causing an immediate, visceral annoyance for Stewie, who is on the floor with blocks spelling red rum. The archaic, chilling reference to murder, combined with Peter's oblivious antics, perfectly sets the stage for Stewie's simmering rage. He responds by silently writing in a notepad, a subtle but significant detail, showing his capacity for detailed planning and documentation, even in the face of minor irritations. The main plot of the episode revolves around Meg's social struggles and Peter's attempt to build a parade float with his friends. This domestic chaos forms the backdrop for Stewie's own, more sinister internal narrative. While Meg is at a pancake house called Flappy Jack's, Stewie is in his stroller, deep in thought. The transcript gives us a glimpse into his mind through cutaways. Stewie as a piano teacher, electrocuting a student for a wrong note, and then as a bassoon teacher, with a girl hanging precariously over a shark-filled pool. These dark fantasies, seemingly disconnected, underscore Stewie's inherent sadism and his casual approach to inflicting pain and punishment, even if it's currently only in his imagination. They reveal the dark wellspring from which his plans against Lois emerge. As Meg begins to exploit Stewie's baby status to gain tips by pretending to be a struggling single mother, Stewie becomes an unwitting accomplice in a different kind of manipulation. Meg's lies escalate, telling a couple that Stewie is her baby and his father doesn't pay child support. This moment, where Stewie is used as a prop for deceit, could be seen as further fueling his resentment towards the matriarchal tyranny he despises, as he's now being controlled and utilized by another female figure. The neighborhood descends into a literal war zone over a stolen parade trophy, with trenches, barbed wire, and sandbags. During this bizarre conflict, a social worker and 2 police officers arrive at the Griffin house. They take Stewie away from Lois, prompted by Meg's fabricated stories about him being a crack-addicted baby. Lois screams in despair as Stewie is removed from her care. Now, this is where the interpretation deepens. While Stewie's removal might seem like a setback, it's also a profound disruption to Lois's oppressive reign. Stewie is placed in a foster home with children from various cultures, and his reaction is telling. He insults their cultures, refusing to engage with their attempts at welcome. This isn't just prejudice, it's a demonstration of his rigid worldview and his inability to accept anything outside his own meticulously crafted order. He then cunningly tricks the other foster children into hating each other, effectively creating chaos within his new environment. This showcases his talent for psychological warfare, a subtle yet powerful weapon. The family, along with their neighbors, eventually realizes the error of their ways, spurred by Brian's speech about how a trophy tore their friendships apart. They rally together to get Stewie back. Peter, pulled out of the fireplace by Stewie, rescues him, and they escape through the window. The crucial takeaway here, regarding Stewie's pursuit of Lois, is the subtle evolution of his methods. While the mind control ray and rocket were overt, grand gestures, this episode demonstrates his capacity for more insidious, psychological warfare. His internal fantasies of electrocution and shark-filled pools, his ability to sow discord among the foster children, and his general annoyance at being used as a prop for Meg's lies, all contribute to a growing arsenal of tactics. He may not have fired a laser at Lois in this episode, but he showcased a different kind of weapon. His intellect, his capacity for manipulation, and his deep-seated desire to see those around him suffer, especially if they stand in his way. He's not just a baby with a ray gun. He's a tiny, Machiavellian mastermind, learning the many ways to exert his will. Stewie's inventive use of unconventional weaponry and his capacity for psychological manipulation are undeniable. But what if he could bypass physical confrontation altogether? What if he could control the very minds of those around him, especially Lois. Our journey continues with S03E01, an episode that delves into Stewie's shift towards psychological manipulation and mind control as a more insidious means to an end. The episode opens with Brian in therapy, expressing a deep sense of rut and boredom with life, stating, "Nothing thrills me anymore." His therapist, Dr. Bruce, suggests volunteer work as a way to focus on the needs of others. This subplot, while seemingly unrelated, subtly mirrors Stewie's own struggles with finding purpose, though Stewie's purpose is, of course, far more sinister. Meanwhile, at the Happy-Go-Lucky Toys Inquirer cafeteria, Peter's boss, Mr. Weed, announces a company picnic due to several complaints and the 2 deaths related to worker fatigue. This darkly comedic detail sets a tone of casual disregard for life that, in a twisted way, aligns with Stewie's own outlook. The picnic itself becomes a chaotic free-for-all, with a catch-the-greased-up deaf guy event and a tranquilizer dart hunt where the last one standing wins a paid vacation. Lois urges Peter to "Go, Peter," as he runs into the woods. Stewie, observing his father, makes a rather pointed, if obscure comment. "Look at him. He runs like a Welshman. Doesn't he? Doesn't he run like a Welshman?" This seemingly random observation is actually a fascinating insight into Stewie's mind. It suggests a vast, perhaps encyclopedic, knowledge of human behavior and stereotypes, which he could easily leverage for more targeted manipulation. It's not just a joke, it's a hint at his observational prowess. The episode then takes a significant turn with Brian's storyline. After a morally compromising incident at a nursing home where an elderly woman, Pearl, tricks him into almost pulling her life support plug, Brian finds himself drawn into police work. His heightened sense of smell leads him to become a narc, sniffing out criminals, including a hilarious encounter where he accurately deduces Quagmire's recent activities. This new role, however, leads Brian down a dark path of cocaine addiction, driven by the rush he'd been seeking. As Brian's addiction spirals, he becomes aggressive and paranoid, insulting the family and bringing a prostitute, Tina, home. Lois tries to intervene, but Brian's behavior is out of control. The family, including Stewie, eventually stages an intervention. Meg, in a rare moment of vulnerability, tries to express her feelings, but the scene cuts away before she can finish. The crucial link to Stewie's ongoing desire to control Lois comes during Brian's descent into addiction. Stewie observes the chaos, the emotional distress, and the breakdown of familial order. He sees how easily minds can be corrupted, how quickly behavior can be altered by external influences, whether it's a drug or a manipulative individual. While he isn't directly involved in Brian's addiction, he is a keen observer of cause and effect. Later, after Brian gets clean and decides to leave, Stewie, holding his teddy bear, toddles after him, crying, then spits on the ground in disgust as Brian drives away. This display of emotion, though brief, is a rare glimpse into Stewie's vulnerability, but it also underscores the depth of his understanding of influence and control. Brian's journey from boredom to addiction, then to recovery and departure, is a masterclass in how a mind can be swayed and broken. Stewie, ever the learner, is implicitly absorbing these lessons. This episode, therefore, isn't about Stewie directly using a mind control device, but rather about his witnessing the power of mind control, albeit through the lens of addiction and intervention. He sees how easily an individual, even one as intelligent as Brian, can be manipulated, and how swiftly a family can be thrown into disarray. This observation would undoubtedly reinforce his belief in the efficacy of psychological tactics, perhaps even more so than brute force. He's learning that sometimes the most effective way to kill Lois might not be with a ray gun, but by slowly dismantling her world, or by subtly twisting her perception of reality, much like Brian's mind was twisted by cocaine. It's a dark education in the art of mental warfare, and Stewie is an attentive student. Stewie's genius, as we've seen, extends beyond simple gadgets, and into the realm of intricate psychological warfare. But what happens when he steps back and observes the grand, complex schemes of the adult world, absorbing lessons that will inevitably feed into his own matricidal ambitions? Our journey continues with S03E13, an episode that offers a masterclass in Stewie's elaborate planning, demonstrating the tactical mind capable of grand, destructive schemes, even when he's merely an observer. The episode initially places the Griffin family at the Quahog Zoo. Peter, in typical fashion, sabotages Lois's organized schedule with a smoke bomb, creating chaos. Stewie, meanwhile, is at the petting zoo, where Brian inadvertently causes Stewie's animal food to spill, leading to Stewie being chased by a swarm of farm animals. His frustration is palpable, and he's left disheveled and bandaged. This minor setback, caused by Brian's casual interference, likely reinforces Stewie's growing contempt for those who disrupt his order, a group in which Lois is often the primary member. The narrative then shifts to Peter's comical attempts to culture himself to impress Carter Pewterschmidt, Lois's wealthy father. Peter's efforts, from struggling with The New Yorker to drawing an extra eye on a Picasso, culminate in his accidental discovery of Brian masturbating. This awkward moment leads Lois to suggest Brian join them at her parents' mansion for some fresh air. Stewie, however, shares a knowing private thought. I know where I go when I want to relax. A cutaway then shows Stewie, shirtless, dancing enthusiastically in a gay club, a stark and humorous contrast to the family's more mundane realities. This glimpse into Stewie's secret life reminds us of his independent, often hedonistic, inner world, a world Lois has no part in. At the Pewterschmidt mansion, Stewie delivers a darkly humorous line to Lois's mother, Babs, remarking, "I smell death on you," a classic Stewie moment that serves as a chilling reminder of his morbid fascinations. The main plot here revolves around Peter attempting to bond with Carter, culminating in a high-stakes poker game with Bill Gates and Michael Eisner. Peter, using his keen observation of Ted Turner's Tell, helps Carter win a massive hand. This entire sequence is a masterclass in strategic thinking, bluffing, and subtle manipulation, all skills Stewie himself possesses and undoubtedly observes with great interest. The rich men then bond by engaging in destructive acts, like smashing mailboxes and mooning a toll booth operator, showing a powerful, chaotic side to the elite that Stewie might well aspire to replicate. The episode's central dramatic climax, however, belongs to Brian. He finds himself in a custody battle with Carter over Seabreeze's puppies, which he believes are his. The court proceedings are a chaotic spectacle, with Peter's bumbling testimony revealing personal family secrets, including Meg's true father. The judge, who resembles Cleveland Brown, initially grants Brian custody on the condition of neutering, but just as the procedure is about to begin, Lois bursts in, revealing the shocking truth. The puppies are not Brian's at all, but rather belong to Ted Turner, who had an affair with Seabreeze. This dramatic revelation, a public humiliation for Brian, and a moment of intense chaos for the family, becomes a crucial observation point for Stewie. As Brian's world collapses, Stewie is seen sitting on Lois's lap at the racetrack, beatboxing. Think about that. Physically close to Lois, in a position of infantile comfort, yet completely detached, beatboxing to the rhythm of someone else's emotional devastation. He's not comforting his mother, nor is he expressing concern for Brian. Instead, he's a tiny, unblinking observer, finding perverse amusement in the unraveling of a carefully constructed reality. This scene profoundly illustrates Stewie's capacity for emotional detachment and his enjoyment of chaos, even when it directly impacts those around him. This episode, while not featuring a direct attempt on Lois's life, is a masterclass in the kind of elaborate, multi-layered schemes that Stewie is capable of. He observes the power of strategic thinking in Peter's poker game, the destructive potential of the powerful elite, and the profound emotional impact of public humiliation and shocking revelations in Brian's custody battle. His beatboxing on Lois's lap is the key insight here, revealing a core truth. Stewie is not just plotting. He's learning how to orchestrate grand, destructive dramas, and he finds a chilling satisfaction in the spectacle. He's refining his understanding of how to dismantle lives, how to manipulate emotions, and how to create chaos, all tools that could, and eventually would, be turned against Lois in the most elaborate ways imaginable. Stewie's observation of complex schemes, as seen in the Pewterschmidt saga, shows his capacity for strategic thinking. But what if his target isn't just a local family member, but someone with global reach, and his methods escalate to encompass international pursuit and advanced weaponry? This is where Stewie truly begins to flex his matricidal muscles on a grander scale. Our journey continues with SO4-EZO-1, an episode that explores Stewie's relentless global pursuit and advanced weaponry in a high-stakes assassination attempt, demonstrating his unwavering dedication to his primary goal. The episode opens with the shocking announcement that Family Guy has been canceled by Fox, a meta-commentary that directly impacts the family. Peter, however, quickly reveals that this is merely a setup for a new, more ambitious storyline. This meta-narrative, where the very fabric of their reality is questioned and reshaped, echoes Stewie's own desire to rewrite his personal reality by eliminating Lois. As Peter and Lois head off for a second honeymoon to Cape Cod, leaving Brian in charge, Stewie immediately tests Brian's authority by soiling his diaper. This is a classic Stewie move, reasserting his dominance and challenging any form of matriarchal or parental control, even from Brian. The subsequent chaos with Chris and Meg fighting further highlights the instability of the household without Lois's direct presence, and Stewie, in a moment of manipulative genius, offers his assistance with parenting, subtly positioning himself as a figure of authority. The true escalation of Stewie's influence, however, comes later in the episode. While Peter and Lois are embroiled in a ridiculous plot involving Mel Gibson and a stolen film reel for Passion of the Christ II, Stewie is at home, observing. When Peter and Lois escape Gibson's henchmen, they are pursued in a biplane, culminating in Lois's kidnapping. This dramatic sequence, filled with high-octane chases and international intrigue, provides Stewie with a unique opportunity to see how global forces and powerful individuals operate. He observes how a single target, Lois, can become entangled in a massive, dangerous plot. The pivotal moment for Stewie's matricidal ambitions occurs when Peter and Lois are safe, having defeated Mel Gibson in a parody of North by Northwest on Mount Rushmore. The excitement of their escape reignites their passion, and they embrace. It's a moment of renewed connection and intimacy for Peter and Lois. But back home, Stewie and Brian are involved in a much darker plot, planting drugs on Jake Tucker, the boy with an upside-down face, to get back at his father, Tom Tucker. Brian, with Stewie's help, plants cocaine in Jake's locker. This act, far from being a simple prank, is a chilling display of Stewie's escalating ruthlessness and his willingness to engage in criminal activity. He and Brian congratulate themselves on their success in planting the drugs. When Meg asks where they got the cocaine, Brian casually mentions he has a guy. This implies a deeper, more illicit network at play, one that Stewie is now a part of. While Lois is not the direct target of the drug planting, the act itself is a major step in Stewie's development as a criminal mastermind. He is no longer just building ray guns. He is actively participating in illegal, destructive schemes that have real-world consequences for others. This willingness to engage in such acts, coupled with his cold detachment and strategic planning, signals a significant escalation in his capability and intent. The meta-narrative of the show's cancellation and return, combined with Peter and Lois's global adventure, contrasts sharply with Stewie's quiet, yet increasingly dangerous, criminal activities at home. He is not just dreaming of world domination. He is actively engaging in acts of sabotage and manipulation, learning how to operate outside the law. This episode, therefore, marks a critical point where Stewie embraces more sophisticated, real-world methods of control and destruction. He's learning to use the tools of the criminal underworld, an arsenal that he could, and eventually would, turn against his mother in a much more permanent fashion. He's becoming a true global threat, capable of orchestrating complex plots that go far beyond the confines of Quahog. Stewie's mastery of elaborate schemes and his willingness to engage in criminal acts showcase a chilling dedication to his goals. But beneath the layers of malevolence and tactical genius, there lies a surprising, almost tender, side to his relationship with Lois, a complexity that profoundly complicates his core desire to eliminate her. Our journey continues with Season 5, Episode 1, an episode that offers a surprising look at this intricate, almost tender side of Stewie's relationship with Lois, complicating his core desire. The episode begins with the Griffin family grappling with a severe flu epidemic and Peter's traumatic experience with a prostate exam. This backdrop of familial distress and vulnerability sets a unique stage for Stewie's emotional arc. A significant event occurs when Stewie's beloved teddy bear, Rupert, is tragically ripped to pieces by a dog. For Stewie, Rupert is more than a toy. He is a confidant, a partner in crime, and an emotional anchor. The destruction of Rupert is a moment of genuine distress for the infant. But then, in an act of unexpected maternal care, Lois takes the time to sew Rupert back up, meticulously repairing him. When she returns the restored teddy bear to Stewie, his reaction is profoundly telling. Overjoyed, Stewie declares, with a rare, unadulterated sincerity, "You're my everything." This powerful statement stands in stark contrast to his usual vitriol towards Lois. It reveals a deep-seated dependency and affection that exists alongside his matricidal fantasies. However, the duality of Stewie's nature is immediately evident. Brian, observing this tender moment, teases Stewie about loving his mom, prompting Stewie to swiftly pull a gun on him. The shift from heartfelt affection to violent aggression is instantaneous, showcasing the volatile mix of emotions that define him. The episode further explores the complexities of their bond. Lois becomes exhausted by Stewie's constant demands and dependency, reaching a point where she leaves him in his crib and goes to bed. When he screams, she yells back, and he falls silent, highlighting the power dynamics at play and her occasional, understandable frustration. Later, in a darkly comedic sequence, Stewie pretends to commit suicide in his room, a disturbing cry for attention. This is followed by a moment of genuine danger when Brian accidentally flushes the toilet, sucking Stewie down the drain and into the sewer. Stewie calls for help, but Lois, engrossed in a newspaper and chips in the living room, completely ignores him. This casual indifference from Lois, even if unintentional, underscores the psychological distance that often separates them. Yet, despite these moments of neglect and frustration, the episode culminates in another tender interaction. Stewie falls down the stairs and is immediately comforted by Lois. He tells her he had a bad dream, and Lois, in a truly maternal gesture, kisses him and reassures him, saying she'll always be there for him. This promise, from the very woman Stewie vows to destroy, is a profoundly unsettling moment. The key revelation of this episode is the existence of a genuine, albeit deeply conflicted bond between Stewie and Lois. His declaration of, "You're my everything," followed by Lois's promise to always be there for him, forms the emotional core. This complicates the narrative of Stewie's matricidal desire significantly. Is his drive to kill Lois born purely of hatred, or is it also a desperate attempt to sever the profound dependency he feels, to gain ultimate control over the one person who represents both his greatest threat and his deepest source of comfort? The unsettling truth is that Lois is the center of Stewie's world, both as his oppressor and his lifeline. Killing her would mean destroying the very foundation of his existence, a terrifying prospect, even for a genius baby bent on world domination. This episode peels back the layers of his villainy, revealing a vulnerable, deeply human need for his mother, a need that makes his ultimate goal all the more tragic and psychologically complex. This complex, almost symbiotic relationship between Stewie and Lois sets the stage for what happens when the unthinkable actually occurs, forcing us to confront the true consequences of his lifelong ambition. Stewie's capacity for both tender affection and cold-blooded criminality creates a fascinating, unsettling portrait of his character. But what happens when the object of his lifelong obsession is finally removed, and he achieves the ultimate goal he's been striving for? Our journey continues with Season 6, Episode 4, the pivotal episode where Stewie's ultimate goal is seemingly achieved, changing everything and setting a new course for the family. The episode opens with the Griffin family celebrating Lois's birthday at a fancy restaurant. Chris and Meg give her a tube of Topol, the smoker's tooth polish, a rather pointed gift. Brian, however, gives her 2 tickets for a cruise. Lois, much to Brian's disappointment, assumes the second ticket is for Peter, leading to Peter and Lois embarking on their romantic getaway. Stewie, who had packed his own suitcases, eagerly anticipating a trip surrounded by semen, referring to sperm whales, is devastated when Brian informs him he's not going. His disappointment is so profound, he compares it to seeing the movie The Lake House. This is a rare glimpse into Stewie's emotional vulnerability, a moment where his grand plans are thwarted by mundane adult decisions. On the cruise ship, Peter and Lois share a romantic moment, embracing on the railing as the sun sets. Lois compares it to a scene from Titanic, while Peter comically misidentifies the lead actress. This romantic interlude is soon to be shattered. Back at the Griffin house, Stewie is in the living room with Brian. He pulls a little red wagon filled with a chilling array of weapons, a mace, a chainsaw, and axes. Stewie meticulously details a gruesome plan to torture Lois upon her return. What's particularly disturbing here is Brian's reaction. He becomes aroused by the violent imagery, encouraging Stewie with increasingly specific and fetishistic suggestions. This interaction highlights the dark, morally ambiguous relationship between Stewie and Brian, where Brian often acts as an enabler or a disturbing sounding board for Stewie's malevolence. Stewie then quips that he will do to Lois what douchebags did to the guitar, a cutaway illustrating a cliché, sensitive acoustic guitar performance, further underscoring his disdain for anything he perceives as weak or irritating. Then the unthinkable happens. The scene returns to the cruise ship at night. Stewie, now dressed in full black commando gear, stalks Lois on the deck. He pulls out a submachine gun and shoots her multiple times. Lois falls backward over the railing and into the ocean, her body sinking, leaving a trail of blood. Stewie, after a moment of triumph, trips and hurts himself, ironically crying for his mommy. This is it, the culmination of Stewie's lifelong ambition. He has finally killed Lois. The story then jumps forward to a news report announcing Lois's disappearance. The family watches, devastated, as Joe Swanson informs a grieving Peter that the search has been called off. Peter lets out a dramatic slow-motion "No!" as the camera pulls up and away from the house, emphasizing the profound impact of Lois's absence. A title card appears, reading 1 year later. The family's life has drastically changed. Peter goes on a series of bad dates, and Meg has taken over the motherly role, a bleak transformation. Stewie, however, is seen sitting in his high chair, secretly gloating about getting away with the murder. This moment of silent triumph is chilling, confirming his long-held intent. Brian, ever the detective, becomes suspicious and finds a receipt for a speedboat rental in Stewie's room, a crucial piece of evidence. Meanwhile, Joe, Cleveland, and Quagmire, also suspicious, search the Griffin's trash. They find a gun and a child's drawing with "Die Lois Die" scrawled on it, which they mistakenly attribute to Peter. Peter is subsequently arrested and put on trial for Lois's murder. Various characters, including Carter Pewterschmidt and Chris, testify against him. Just as the judge is about to sentence Peter to life in prison, the courtroom doors burst open. A silhouetted figure stands in the doorway. It's Lois, alive and well, to the shock of everyone. Lois explains that Peter didn't kill her, but someone else did. She dramatically points at a stunned Stewie and declares, "It was Stewie." The episode ends on this cliffhanger, leaving the audience stunned. This episode is monumental. Stewie actually does it. He executes Lois, or so we are led to believe. The immediate aftermath, the family's grief, Meg's transformation, Stewie's silent gloating, provides a chilling glimpse into a world without Lois. His brief moment of crying for Mommy after the act is a profound, unsettling detail, hinting at the deep, unresolved psychological complexities of his matricidal drive. Was it truly hatred, or a desperate attempt to sever a connection he couldn't live with, or without? The return of Lois and her dramatic accusation sets the stage for an even deeper exploration of the consequences of Stewie's actions and the true nature of his relationship with his mother. This is not merely a fantasy. This is the moment his darkest desire seemingly became reality, changing the very fabric of the Family Guy universe. The dramatic return of Lois in the previous episode, pointing directly at Stewie and declaring him her attacker, plunged the family into a new, terrifying reality. Now, the full shocking story of her survival and the chilling depths of Stewie's plans are finally revealed. Our journey continues with Season 6, Episode 5, an episode that not only unravels the profound, unforeseen repercussions of Stewie's successful assassination attempt, but also reveals Lois's astonishing retaliation. The episode picks up immediately after Lois's dramatic accusation in the courtroom. Peter, initially dismissive of his baby son's alleged evil, is forced to confront the truth as Lois recounts her incredible tale of survival. Lois explains that after Stewie shot her multiple times on the cruise ship, she fell into the ocean. She was then improbably rescued by a reverse merman, a creature with the top half of a fish and the bottom half of a human. After kicking him away when he made advances, she suffered from amnesia and wandered aimlessly, eventually ending up at a summer camp where she tried to prevent overweight children from eating each other. Her journey then led her to a diner where she met a young man named Derek, who, in a truly bizarre turn of events, took her to a white supremacist meeting. It was there, upon being punched for objecting to the hateful rhetoric, that her memory was fully restored. This unbelievable series of events highlights the show's capacity for absurd resilience, almost as if the universe itself was conspiring to prevent Lois's permanent demise. Back in the courtroom, with Lois's memory restored, Joe Swanson finally grasps the terrifying reality. Stewie is a homicidal baby, but Stewie, ever the escape artist, has vanished. Joe and Peter, now united in their pursuit, vow to catch him, leading to a comedic montage of police questioning various characters, including Superman's housekeeper, Consuela, at the Fortress of Solitude. However, when the Griffin family returns home, Stewie is there, waiting for them with a gun. He holds them hostage, forcing Peter to admire his macaroni art of an owl, a chilling display of his petty tyranny. When Joe knocks at the door, Stewie forces Brian at gunpoint to insult their friend, then later to retract the insult, playing a cruel game with Joe's emotions. The situation escalates dramatically when Cleveland Brown opens the door and is immediately shot by Stewie, falling to the ground as the family reacts in horror. This cold-blooded act, though later revealed to be part of a larger deception, showcases Stewie's absolute ruthlessness. He even orders Lois to breastfeed him, then forces Brian to taste the milk first, a moment of grotesque psychological torment. Stewie then escapes with Brian as his hostage, dragging Cleveland's seemingly lifeless body. They drive away in a Toyota Prius, with Stewie detailing his plan for world domination, even having a flashback to a humiliating American Idol audition where Simon Cowell expressed a desire to shoot him. Meanwhile, the family, now untied, realizes Chris was never tied and discusses starting a rumor about Rob Schneider, a darkly humorous distraction from their immediate peril. Stewie's car eventually crashes due to an accidental gun discharge, but the true masterstroke of the episode comes with the revelation that follows. After the family discovers a hidden armory in Stewie's room, and Peter accidentally switches minds with Lois, the scene shifts to Stewie and Brian at CIA headquarters. Stewie, with Brian's reluctant help, infiltrates the main server room, explaining his plan to take over the world's power grid. He successfully breaches security, causing lights to flicker off across the globe, and a news report announces Stewie as the new president of the world. He then begins to issue absurd decrees from the Oval Office, including a law that anyone who sees Peter Griffin must throw apples at him. But then, Lois, now dressed in commando gear, crashes through the Oval Office window, initiating an intense, action movie-style fight that destroys the office. Peter walks into the burning wreckage, finds Lois and Stewie seemingly dead, shoots Stewie's body, and delivers a one-liner, then poses victoriously over Stewie's body. And then, the shocking twist. The scene freezes, and the words, "Simulation over," appear in large green text. The camera pulls back to reveal Stewie in his room, sitting in a VR simulation chair and removing his headset. He calmly explains to Brian that he was running a comprehensive simulation to see how his plan to kill Lois and take over the world would play out. This incredible revelation is the core of the episode's dark lore. It means that while the previous episode led us to believe Stewie had actually killed Lois, this episode reveals it was all a meticulously planned, virtual, dry run. What does this tell us? It suggests that even in his ultimate fantasy of matricide and world domination, Stewie has to contend with Lois's resilience. She returns, she fights back, and she pushes him to his limits. Even in his own mind, he can't truly erase her. The simulation isn't just about the act of killing. It's about the consequences and the enduring influence of Lois, even after her supposed demise. It's a terrifying glimpse into Stewie's psyche, where his grandest victory is still haunted by the ghost of his mother, forcing him to confront the unsettling truth that truly getting rid of Lois might be far more complex than a simple pull of a trigger. His desire to eliminate her is so profound, so all-consuming, that he must simulate every possible outcome, every counterattack, every scenario, proving that Lois, in a twisted way, truly is his everything. Stewie's intricate simulation, where Lois's resilience even in his own mind forces him to rethink his strategy, proves that truly eliminating her isn't just about the act, but the enduring consequences and her capacity to fight back. This internal struggle for control over his ultimate desire means he must be prepared for anything, even the most extreme survival scenarios. Our journey continues with Season 7, Episode 9, an episode that examines Stewie's remarkable ability to adapt and survive in extreme situations, a trait crucial for navigating a world forever altered by his actions. The episode begins with a meta-commentary, a title card claiming the episode was recently discovered in Peter Griffin's basement, setting a tone of unearthed, perhaps forgotten, lore. The central plot revolves around Peter being tasked with babysitting Stewie while Lois attends her book club. Lois reminds Peter to be responsible, referencing a darkly comedic flashback where Peter apologizes for shaking their infant son, Peter Griffin Jr., to death, thinking it would stop his crying. This disturbing moment underscores the casual disregard for life that sometimes permeates the Griffin household, a dark humor that Stewie often embodies. Peter's friends, Quagmire, Joe, and Cleveland, arrive with stolen cigarettes, leading to a raucous sleepover-like gathering. Stewie, neglected and disturbed by the noise, comes downstairs to complain. His frustration at being ignored is palpable. He then attempts to fix the satellite dish on the roof to watch a black and white TV show, but gets locked out and calls for help. Brian arrives in his Prius and, rather than immediately helping, mocks Stewie by pretending to interview him. This dynamic of Stewie's genius being undermined by the mundane incompetence or indifference of others is a recurring theme. The episode then takes a bizarre turn with a long, unrelated live-action clip of Conway Twitty performing "I See the Want To in Your Eyes." This extended, almost hypnotic interlude is a hallmark of the show's early seasons, often used to create a surreal, dreamlike quality that aligns well with the sleep lore format. After this, Peter discovers an old raffle ticket from 1989, revealing he won a round of golf with O.J. Simpson. Lois and Brian are shocked, explaining O.J.'s infamous past. Peter, initially in denial, is eventually convinced by Joe, who shows him a dust in the wind montage, leading Peter to realize O.J. is a murderer. Peter, wired for sound, tries to get a confession from O.J. on the golf course, but the plan backfires. Feeling deceived, O.J. becomes upset, and Peter, in a misguided attempt to help, brings O.J. home to stay with the family. Lois is furious, but Peter defends O.J., despite Brian's protests about the overwhelming evidence against him. It is in this chaotic, dangerous environment that Stewie's survival instincts truly shine. When O.J. accidentally drops a pan of lasagna, and Lois slips in the sauce and falls, Brian immediately panics, thinking she has been murdered. This moment of mistaken identity and heightened tension is a direct mirror to Stewie's own actions against Lois. During this domestic chaos, Stewie approaches O.J. directly, asking him for advice on getting away with murder. O.J. responds by using Stewie as a football, throwing him to Chris. This interaction, while played for dark comedy, is incredibly significant. Stewie, the matricidal infant, is actively seeking tutelage from a real-life accused murderer, absorbing lessons on how to evade justice. The town, alerted to O.J.'s presence, forms an angry mob. O.J. gives a speech, admitting his imperfections, and the crowd is surprisingly moved. But then, in a shocking turn, O.J. stabs 3 people in the crowd, causing mass panic. Peter finally realizes O.J. is guilty. This episode, though not directly focused on Stewie's attempts on Lois, is crucial for understanding his evolution as a character prepared for a world where his actions have real, devastating consequences. His ability to survive being locked on the roof, his resilience in the face of neglect, and most importantly, his direct consultation with O.J. Simpson on the nuances of getting away with murder, all contribute to his growing arsenal of survival and evasion tactics. He's learning from the best, or worst, depending on your perspective. The episode subtly reinforces that Stewie is not just a plotter of grand schemes, but a pragmatic survivor, adaptable and resourceful. If he were to truly kill Lois, he would need these skills not just to commit the act, but to navigate the inevitable fallout and evade capture, a skill he actively seeks to perfect in this unsettling chapter of his development. Stewie's elaborate simulation of Lois's death and subsequent global takeover showed his meticulous planning and a shocking willingness to execute his ultimate goal. Yet, even in his own mind, Lois proved a formidable opponent, forcing him to adapt. This complex dynamic sets the stage for a world where such a crime could actually happen, and how the legal and societal implications would play out within Quahog. Our journey continues with Season 9, Episode 1, an episode that, while not directly featuring Stewie's matricide, explores the wider societal and legal implications of murder within Quahog, and how Stewie might navigate a world where he has committed such an act. The episode is a 2-part special, titled And Then There Were Fewer, a clear homage to Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, immediately signaling a murder mystery. The Griffin family receives a mysterious invitation to a gala dinner in their honor at Rocky Point Manor, an isolated Gothic mansion on a private island. Peter, oblivious to any potential danger, enthusiastically accepts. Brian, however, expresses concern, calling it clearly some kind of scam, but Peter dismisses him, threatening to send him to the kennel, a place Brian clearly dreads. Stewie, ever perceptive, remarks that Brian stinks when you come out of there, a subtle jab highlighting the unpleasantness of confinement. The family, along with a host of other Quahog regulars, Joe and Bonnie Swanson, Mort and Muriel Goldman, Quagmire and his date Stephanie, Carl the convenience store clerk, Tom Tucker and Diane Simmons, and Mayor Adam West, all arrive at the isolated manor, each having received a similar invitation for a dinner in their honor. The sense of foreboding is palpable as the double doors close behind them, trapping them inside. The guests gather in the dining hall, and the first murder occurs. As Brian attempts to open a bottle of champagne, the cork shoots out and hits Quagmire's date, Stephanie, in the chest. She slumps forward, dead. Tom Tucker confirms she's been shot. The lights then flicker and go out, plunging the room into darkness. A scream is heard, and when the lights return, James Woods, the host, is found dead with a knife in his back. Panic ensues. The group attempts to escape, but the front gate is closed, and a lightning strike destroys the bridge connecting the island to the mainland, trapping them. Peter, in his attempt to flee, crashes his car, which then precariously dangles over the chasm before Lois manages to back it up to safety. Trapped, the remaining guests huddle in the library. Joe confirms they are stuck with no way out. The group decides to split up to search the house. Peter, in a moment of comedic obtuseness, pairs himself with Lois, while Brian and Stewie refuse to be paired with Meg, claiming they need time to figure out Peter's birthday gift. More bodies are discovered. Muriel Goldman, stabbed with the same knife as James Woods, and later Derek, killed by a Golden Globe Award, and Tom Tucker, found with a head wound. The tension escalates as the killer is revealed to be Diane Simmons, who holds Lois at gunpoint. Diane confesses her entire plan, revealing her motive: revenge on Tom Tucker and James Woods. The climax sees Diane struggling with Lois on the edge of a cliff, about to push her off. But then, a shot rings out. Diane is hit and falls into the water below. Lois looks up to see who saved her, and through the scope of a sniper rifle, we see Stewie in a tower window. His chilling declaration, "If anybody's gonna take that bitch down, it's gonna be me," reveals his true intent. He saved Lois, not out of affection, but because he sees her as his target, his trophy. This episode is a profound exploration of the mechanics of murder and its investigation within the Family Guy universe. The sheer number of victims, the meticulous planning by Diane Simmons, and the subsequent police investigation all provide Stewie with invaluable lessons. He witnesses firsthand how a well-executed murder can frame an innocent person, Peter, how evidence is gathered, and how a community reacts to such a crime. His decision to save Lois, purely for his own selfish matricidal reasons, is a dark twist. It underscores his proprietary view of Lois. She is his to destroy, and no one else's. If Stewie were to permanently kill Lois, this episode shows us the legal and societal framework he would have to contend with. He would need to be cunning enough to avoid detection, resourceful enough to evade capture, and ruthless enough to execute his plan without interference. The casual way the town's elite are picked off, and the eventual framing of an innocent party, offers a dark blueprint for Stewie. He's not just a baby with a laser gun anymore. He's a potential criminal mastermind who understands the complexities of a real-world murder, and crucially, how to manipulate the outcome to his own advantage. His intervention to save Lois, for his own twisted purposes, proves that his long-standing desire for her demise is not just a joke, but a deep-seated, possessive obsession. Stewie's intervention in the murder mystery of Rocky Point Manor, driven by his proprietary claim over Lois's demise, showed his capacity to manipulate complex situations to his own advantage. This innate drive to control his environment, to reshape reality to suit his will, is a fundamental aspect of his character, one that would only intensify in a world where Lois was truly gone. Our journey continues with Season 11, Episode 2, an episode that, while not directly related to Lois's death, profoundly explores Stewie's innate drive to manipulate and control his environment, hinting at what his ultimate purpose might become without Lois as a target. The episode, titled Ratings Guy, opens with the Griffin family receiving mail, including a letter from the Nielsen Company. They've been chosen as a Nielsen family, meaning their viewing habits will influence national television programming. Peter is ecstatic, seeing this as an opportunity for unprecedented power. Stewie, ever the astute observer, makes a cutting remark about Brian's supposed passion for PBS. Yeah, you're real passionate about PBS. You donated once 5 years ago, and they sent you a mug. And now the mug's so old that the P's been worn off, so it just says BS, which is so fucking apt. This witty, cynical observation not only highlights Stewie's intelligence, but also his contempt for hypocrisy and false pretenses, a characteristic he often projects onto the adult world. The core of the episode revolves around Peter's abuse of his Nielsen power. He begins to manipulate various TV shows, injecting absurd and often crude elements into them. We see news anchors wearing jester hats, game shows turning into Hungry Alec Baldwins, and Mad Men characters engaging in lightsaber duels. This descent into chaotic, nonsensical television programming is a direct result of one person wielding unchecked power. Stewie, throughout this, is not actively participating in Peter's TV manipulation, but he is a keen observer of the power dynamics at play. He sees how easily the masses can be swayed, how quickly an entire industry can be brought to its knees by the whims of a single individual. This real-world example of control and influence, albeit over something as seemingly trivial as television, would undoubtedly resonate with Stewie's own ambitions for world domination. He witnesses how Peter, a man of limited intellect, can bring about widespread chaos simply by pressing a button. The consequences of Peter's actions are severe. An angry mob gathers outside the Griffin's house, blaming Peter for ruining television. His friends, Joe and Quagmire, are alienated. This backlash demonstrates the unpredictable nature of wielding such power and the societal implications of unchecked control. Ultimately, Peter, realizing his mistake and missing his friends, seeks to restore television to its former state. He bursts into a meeting at the Television Producers Guild, confronting show creators like J.J. Abrams and Dick Wolf, giving them absurd ideas to fix their shows. The episode concludes with Peter, Joe, and Quagmire reconciled at the Drunken Clam, watching a normal episode of Mike and Molly. However, the episode's final chilling scene reveals the true, lingering threat. Herbert, the elderly neighbor, is shown in a room full of Nielsen boxes, giving his own bizarre suggestions over the phone, implying that the power to manipulate television is still out there, in unpredictable hands. For Stewie, this episode is a profound lesson in the mechanics of power and control. He sees that true influence doesn't always require ray guns or rocket ships. Sometimes it's about controlling information, media, or even the perception of reality. If Lois were truly gone, Stewie's primary target would be removed, potentially freeing him to pursue his larger ambitions for world domination. This episode provides a blueprint for how he might achieve it, not necessarily through overt violence, but through subtle, pervasive manipulation of the very fabric of society and culture. He learns that with enough leverage, even a seemingly ordinary individual can bend the world to their will. This deepens our understanding of Stewie as a character who would, without Lois as his constant foil, likely turn his formidable intellect and manipulative drive towards controlling the world itself, reshaping it to his own bizarre and tyrannical specifications. Stewie's uncanny ability to manipulate his environment, whether by orchestrating a murder mystery or influencing global television, shows his profound drive for control. But what if this drive for control was turned inward, leading to a radical transformation of his own identity? What would that mean for his lifelong obsession with Lois? Our journey continues with Season 12, Episode 17, an episode that, through Peter's transformation, offers a deeper look into Stewie's identity and potential for a life redefined, free from his primary obsession and the constant chase. The episode, titled The D in Apartment 23, opens with Peter watching TV and Stewie playing with blocks on the floor. Lois enters, insisting Peter take Stewie to the park. Peter, ever the negligent parent, attempts to trick a nurse into giving Stewie a prostate exam, highlighting his casual irresponsibility, a trait that often puts Stewie in danger, and fuels his resentment. At the park, Peter, bored, abandons Stewie in the sandbox, comically pulling out his own eyeball to leave it watching the baby while he sneaks off to the drunken clam. This act of extreme negligence mirrors the kind of vulnerability Stewie often finds himself in, directly under Lois's care. Peter's subsequent frantic rush back to the park, accidentally grabbing the wrong baby, and the chaotic baby swap that ensues, forces Lois to confront his idiocy head-on. She's furious, calling him an idiot, which deeply hurts Peter. This moment of hurt, however, becomes a catalyst for Peter's transformation. The episode then launches into a montage, set to the song "I've Been Everywhere," showing Peter embarking on a series of business trips, visiting cultural landmarks, and even winning a chess tournament. He returns as an intelligent, refined person, much to the initial surprise and eventual dismay of his family. The newly intelligent Peter replaces the family's TV with a bookshelf, attempting to engage his family in reading classic literature, much to their dismay and Brian's annoyance. He even seduces Lois with his newfound intellect. However, Lois and Brian soon decide they miss the old, dumb Peter and plot to change him back. They send him to Tucson, where he is immediately assaulted and surrounded by dim-witted, chaotic people, causing his intelligence to drain away. Peter returns home, back to his normal, idiotic self, and Lois is overjoyed, hugging him, happy to have him back the way he was. Now, let's connect this to Stewie. While the episode focuses on Peter's transformation, it offers a powerful what-if scenario for Stewie. Peter's journey demonstrates that a core aspect of an individual's identity can be radically altered, and then just as radically reversed, driven by the desires of those around them. Stewie, who is constantly defined by his matricidal desire, lives in a perpetual state of conflict with Lois. His intelligence, his malevolence, his very purpose are inextricably linked to her existence. What if Stewie, tired of the chase, tired of the constant battle, underwent a similar transformation? What if, in a world without Lois as his target, his genius found a different outlet, or his malevolence simply faded? The episode subtly suggests that identity, even for a character as seemingly fixed as Stewie, is not immutable. It can be shaped by external forces, by the desires of others, and by the removal of a primary motivation. If Stewie were to finally kill Lois, his identity would be profoundly challenged. Would he become the benevolent genius he sometimes hints at? Or would he, without his primary target, become a different kind of tyrant? Or perhaps even fall into a deep existential crisis, like Brian often does? This episode, through Peter's radical, albeit temporary change, forces us to consider the possibility that Stewie's true self, the self beyond his obsession, is yet to be fully defined. His drive to control, to manipulate, to reshape his environment could, in a post-Lois world, be directed at himself, leading to an entirely new, perhaps even more unsettling, version of Stewie Griffin. The idea that his very essence could be altered, like Peter's, is a terrifying and fascinating possibility, one that challenges the very foundation of his long-standing murderous intent. Stewie's drive to manipulate his environment, whether by orchestrating complex murder mysteries or influencing global television, speaks to a deep need for control. The temporary transformation of Peter's intelligence and its reversal raises questions about the true nature of identity. But what if Stewie's control extended not just to the external world, but to his own inner landscape, allowing him to endlessly replay and refine his most disturbing fantasies of Lois's demise? Our journey continues with Season 14, Episode 10, an episode that offers a comprehensive exploration of Stewie's vivid, often disturbing, internal fantasies and various imagined scenarios of Lois's demise. The episode, titled Candy, Quahog, and an American Johnny, begins with Peter going to Quagmire's house to get hand-me-downs from his dad-mom. Lois voices her disapproval, but Peter, in a cutaway gag, reveals his naughty late-night party line commercials, showcasing his crass and attention-seeking nature. At Quagmire's, Peter, Cleveland, and Joe discover a stack of VHS tapes for Winter Summer, a Korean soap opera Quagmire starred in years ago. They become instantly addicted, binge-watching the show. This immersion in a fictional dramatic world, where emotions are heightened and plot twists are extreme, serves as a fascinating parallel to Stewie's own internal world, where he constantly plays out dramatic scenarios involving Lois. The friends are captivated by the show's melodramatic plot, especially the character of American Johnny, Quagmire. They become emotionally invested, with Cleveland even declaring, "If Hee-sun and Bong-hwa don't get together, I'm going to kill myself." This level of emotional investment in a fictional narrative is key. When they discover the last episode is missing, their desperation to know the ending drives them to travel to Korea. In Korea, Quagmire is recognized as American Johnny, and they meet Soojin, his former co-star and romantic interest from the show. Soojin reveals that Quagmire is a grandfather to her cats, Buttercup's kittens, a bizarre twist that further deepens Quagmire's connection to his Korean past. When they finally watch the last episode, they see American Johnny leave Korea, abandoning his love and family to return to his sad, pathetic bachelor life in America. This ending deeply affects Quagmire, who declares he won't return to Quahog because he has a family in Korea now. Peter, Joe, and Cleveland, desperate to bring him home, attempt to convince him through a K-pop music video, a comically elaborate effort to manipulate his emotions and decision. Ultimately, Quagmire is convinced to return, not by their song, but by the overwhelming, chaotic presence of Soojin's entire extended family, who move into their small apartment. Now, let's bring this back to Stewie and his disturbing fantasies of Lois's demise. This episode, through the lens of Peter and his friends' intense immersion in a fictional melodramatic world, offers a profound insight into Stewie's own mind. Stewie, as we've seen in previous episodes like Lois Kills Stewie, actively runs complex simulations of Lois's death and its aftermath. He crafts these narratives, meticulously planning every detail, every twist, every consequence, much like a showrunner would. The friends' emotional investment in Winter Summer, their horror at the bus crash, their tears at American Johnny's departure, their desperation for the ending, mirrors the intense, almost obsessive way Stewie constructs and experiences his own internal narratives about Lois. For Stewie, these aren't just idle thoughts. They are vivid, emotionally charged shows playing out in his mind, where Lois is always the central, doomed character. The lengths Peter and his friends go to find the last episode of a fictional show is a metaphor for Stewie's relentless pursuit of the final act in his own personal drama with Lois. He constantly seeks the definitive ending, the moment where his ultimate desire is permanently realized. The various scenarios he imagines for Lois, from being shot on a cruise ship to being outsmarted in a global takeover, are his episodes, each one a detailed exploration of her demise. This episode suggests that even without Lois, Stewie's mind would continue to be a theater of elaborate, often disturbing, narratives. His genius for planning, his capacity for emotional detachment, and his deep-seated desire for control would find expression in the endless creation and exploration of these internal what-if scenarios. He is constantly rehearsing, refining, and reimagining the moment of Lois's death, ensuring that when the time truly comes, he will have explored every possibility, every consequence, and every disturbing detail of her final moments. This makes his desire for matricide not just a goal, but a perpetual, evolving, and deeply disturbing creative endeavor. Stewie's capacity for complex simulations and his deep immersion in fictional narratives, as seen in the Korean soap opera saga, reveals a mind constantly rehearsing and refining his most disturbing fantasies. This constant internal engagement with Lois's demise, however, brings us to a critical question. How does Stewie grapple with his own malevolence? Does he ever attempt to moderate it, or is the dark core of his being an immutable force? Our journey continues with Season 16, Episode 16, an episode that, through its meta-narrative and exploration of different eras, implicitly examines Stewie's conscious efforts to moderate his malevolence and the internal battle over his true nature in a post-Lois world. The episode, titled Send in Stewie, Please, opens with Peter Griffin sitting on a stool in a museum of television and radio, addressing the camera. He's presenting a lost episode of Family Guy from 1956, setting a meta-narrative that allows for a retrospective and reevaluation of the show's characters, including Stewie. The lost episode from 1956 presents a black and white idealized version of the Griffin family. Peter, a staunch traditionalist, insists that Lois not work, demonstrating his desire for control over her life. In this era, even the children, including Stewie, are depicted happily smoking Raleigh Kids cigarettes, a darkly satirical commentary on the innocence of a bygone era. Stewie's participation in this, even in a simulated past, hints at a baseline acceptance of societal norms, however twisted they might be. The family's later reaction to an atomic bomb explosion, resulting in afros but no real harm, further grounds this segment in an absurd, detached reality. Lois, defying Peter's wishes, secretly gets a job at a factory to pay for a TV. Peter's anger at her independence is palpable. This conflict between Peter's desire for control and Lois's agency is a recurring theme, and one that directly mirrors Stewie's own struggles with his mother. When Peter discovers Lois's secret, he is initially furious, but when she reveals she was making the TV for him, he is touched and allows her to keep her job. This moment of reconciliation, born from a selfless act, is a rare instance of Peter moderating his controlling nature. The episode then jumps to the 1970s, presenting a disco-era version of the family. Here, Peter and his friends navigate a surprisingly violent disco club, dancing through scenes of stabbings and shootings. This era's chaotic and hedonistic atmosphere provides a stark contrast to the 1950s. Later, Peter tries to deter Chris from running away to Woodstock by showing him the horrors of drugs, but Chris is already tripping on acid. Successive, older versions of Peter appear, each offering contradictory advice, highlighting the evolving and often conflicting moral standards across generations. A particularly poignant segment delves into the Vietnam War era. Peter initially demands Chris enlist, but when Quagmire returns from Vietnam, traumatized and suffering from PTSD, Peter's perspective shifts. Brian, in a moment of moral judgment, spits on Quagmire, calling him a murderer, only for Peter to then spit on Quagmire himself, a bizarre display of inconsistent morality. Quagmire's intense flashbacks to the horrors of war, triggered by the disco music, culminate in him attacking Joe. Peter, witnessing the true, devastating impact of war, realizes his mistake and tries to prevent Chris from shipping out, crying for his son as Chris forlornly departs. For Stewie, this episode, with its journey through different eras and moral landscapes, is a profound internal battleground. He observes how characters, particularly Peter, grapple with their own prejudices, their desires for control, and their understanding of right and wrong. The shift in Peter's attitude towards Lois working and his later realization about the horrors of war demonstrate a capacity for change and moderation, even in the most stubborn of characters. Could Stewie, in a post-Lois world, undergo a similar transformation? Could he consciously choose to moderate his malevolence? The episode's exploration of evolving societal norms and individual moral development provides a framework for this idea. If his primary target is removed, what would become of his relentless drive? Would he, like Peter, find a new purpose? Or would his inherent darkness simply remanifest in new, equally destructive ways? The cemetery scene, where a tombstone reads, "Peter Griffin, stabbed by Ladyboy," serves as a darkly humorous, yet unsettling, reminder of the ever-present threat of violence and chaos in Quahog. This episode implicitly asks whether Stewie's desire for matricide is an unchangeable core of his being, or if it is a product of his environment and his relationship with Lois. If the latter, then her permanent removal could open the door to a Stewie who actively seeks to moderate his malevolence, or at least redirects it in less destructive ways. It suggests an internal battle, a potential for growth, or perhaps an even greater, more unpredictable darkness, as he grapples with the true nature of his identity without his defining obsession. Stewie's continuous, internal rehearsal of Lois's demise, as seen in his deep immersion in fictional narratives and simulations, highlights his obsessive nature. But what if this obsession, this constant defining conflict, were to vanish? How would Stewie, a character so intrinsically linked to his matricidal desire, adapt to a life redefined? Our journey continues with Season 18, Episode 4, an episode that, through its meta-commentary on reboots and character reinvention, offers a profound reflection on how Stewie's character would adapt after achieving his lifelong goal. The episode, titled Palomino, opens in a bustling shopping mall, leading to a Fox TV focus group. The Griffin family is behind a one-way mirror, observing the group. Peter, comically mistaking his reflection for another person, is corrected by Lois, a small but important detail that reestablishes Lois's role as the grounding force in the family. The focus group is there to discuss a potential Family Guy reboot. This meta-narrative allows the show itself to explore fundamental questions about its characters' identities and purpose, particularly in the context of change. The first reboot idea presented is centered on Lois, now with a fit physique, a ponytail, and dressed in a purple sports bra and leggings. This new Lois is shown baking, jogging with Stewie in a baby carrier, beating Peter at video games, and confidently leaving for a new job at a winery. Peter, in this reboot, is reduced to a supportive, almost passive figure, complimenting her from inside the house. This radical reinvention of Lois, where she is empowered and dynamic, offers a stark contrast to her traditional role and presents a what-if scenario for Stewie. In this version, he is literally carried by her, integrated into her active life, a world away from his usual antagonistic stance. The focus group leader then introduces a second reboot idea, a dark, moody drama parodying shows like Riverdale, titled The Q. In this version, the Griffin family is given dramatic, sexy makeovers. Meg is dead, and Brian is a wounded werewolf. This darker, more chaotic reimagining of the characters raises questions about the inherent nature of the Griffins. If the show could be rebooted in such extreme ways, what does that say about the core identity of its characters? The focus group reacts negatively to both reboots, preferring the original Family Guy. Peter, furious at their opinions, argues with them, while the executives, represented by a squirrel in a suit, discuss the feedback. Ultimately, the show remains unchanged, and the episode concludes with the family back on their living room couch, smiling, their familiar selves restored. For Stewie, this episode is a deep dive into the concept of change and reinvention. If Lois were truly gone, Stewie would be stripped of his primary motivation, the constant driving force behind his genius and malevolence. The Lois reboot, where he is passively carried by her, or the Q reboot, where he is part of a dark, dramatic ensemble, suggests alternate paths for his character. Would he, without the constraint of his matricidal quest, find a new purpose? Would his genius be directed towards something benevolent, or would he simply become a different kind of monster, a tyrant without a specific target? The episode's meta-commentary on character identity and the audience's preference for the familiar is highly relevant. It asks whether Stewie's character, as we know him, can exist without Lois. If the audience rejected a new Lois, would they reject a new Stewie, who was no longer obsessed with killing his mother? This forces us to consider the profound impact of Lois's presence on Stewie's very being. Her existence, and his desire to end it, is what defines him. Therefore, in a post-Lois world, Stewie would be faced with an existential crisis of identity. Would he seek to reinvent himself, embracing a new purpose or a new persona, much like the rebooted characters? Or would he struggle to find meaning without his lifelong obsession, perhaps becoming a nihilistic figure, or even a tragically lost soul? This episode compels us to reflect on the idea that Stewie's character is not fixed, but rather a dynamic entity constantly shaped by his relationship with Lois. Her permanent absence would necessitate a complete redefinition of who Stewie Griffin truly is, leading to an unpredictable and potentially unsettling future for the genius infant. Stewie's internal battle over his true nature, as explored through the various Lost episodes and meta reboots, reveals a character grappling with his identity beyond matricide. But what if the killing of Lois isn't always about physical death, but about undermining her, attacking her spirit, or dismantling her most cherished relationships and familial stability? Our journey continues with Season 20, Episode 15, an episode that, through its exploration of delusion and imagined relationships, offers a deeper look into Lois's own vulnerabilities and desires, which Stewie often targets, showing the different ways one can kill a person's spirit or happiness. The episode, titled Girlfriend, Eh?, begins with Peter, Quagmire, Cleveland, and Joe at the Drunken Clam, watching news anchor Tom Tucker report on the grand opening of Virtual Reality World. Peter excitedly suggests they go, but they mistakenly end up at RV World instead, a classic Peter misunderstanding that grounds the episode in everyday absurdity. Meanwhile, Meg is at a bowling alley, challenging other patrons to a game of pool. Bruce brings her a plate piled high with individual mustard packets, a strange and specific detail. It's here that a handsome blonde-haired man named Seymour approaches Meg, helping her with her pool shot. This encounter sets in motion a significant storyline for Meg, one that, while focused on her, highlights the vulnerabilities and emotional needs that Lois too possesses. Later, Peter and his friends finally make it to Virtual Reality World, where they put on VR headsets and experience simulations, including the Marvel experience, where Peter becomes the Hulk. This foray into virtual reality is a crucial element of the episode, as it allows for the creation of completely immersive, yet ultimately false realities. The core of the episode's relevance to our theme unfolds with Meg's relationship with Seymour. After leaving the VR arcade, Meg drives her red station wagon with Seymour in the passenger seat. He pulls a gun, robs a 7-Eleven, and a high-speed car chase with the police ensues. Meg, displaying surprising driving skills, expertly evades the police in an extended action movie parody sequence. They successfully escape and park in a dark alley. The next morning, at the breakfast table, a quick flashback shows Meg in the car with Seymour, evading the police, reinforcing the vividness of this experience for her. The car chase continues, with Meg and Seymour performing increasingly impossible stunts, jumping trains and drawbridges, culminating in a massive pileup of police cars. The chase ends when Meg, driving backward, crashes into Peter's red convertible. Chris then arrives at the crash scene and, in a shocking twist, tells Meg to leave, explaining that Seymour was never real. A series of flashbacks reveal Meg alone at the pool hall, alone in the car, and alone at the car wash. She imagined Seymour the entire time. The episode concludes with the family watching the news. Tom Tucker reports on a mustard recall due to E. coli contamination, with symptoms including delusions of having a criminal boyfriend. The final scene shows a man in the VR arcade who looks exactly like Seymour, taking off his VR headset. It's revealed he was playing a Family Guy simulation, implying that Meg's entire experience was part of his virtual reality game. This episode is profoundly relevant to the theme of killing Lois, because it exposes the fragility of perception and the devastating impact of delusion and manipulation on a person's emotional well-being. Lois, like Meg, has desires for love, validation, and stability. Stewie, in his relentless pursuit, often targets these very aspects of her life. While he physically attacks her in simulations, He also, in the broader narrative of the show, subtly undermines her relationships, her confidence, and her sense of control. The killing of Lois's spirit, or her happiness, doesn't always require a gun. It can be achieved through psychological warfare, through the erosion of her trust, or by creating a reality for her that is as false and devastating as Meg's imagined Seymour. Stewie's genius for manipulation means he could easily sow seeds of doubt, orchestrate betrayals, or create scenarios that leave Lois feeling isolated and heartbroken. The episode's twist, where Meg's reality is revealed to be a simulation within a simulation, further emphasizes the power of fabricated realities and their emotional toll. If Stewie were to permanently kill Lois, either physically or spiritually, this episode provides a chilling blueprint. He could construct elaborate deceptions that destroy her faith in her family, leading to a profound sense of loneliness and despair. He could target her relationships, twisting them until they become unrecognizable. This episode, therefore, expands our understanding of killing Lois beyond mere physical violence, revealing the insidious ways in which her spirit, her happiness, and her very sense of reality could be dismantled, leaving her a hollowed-out version of herself, a fate perhaps even more cruel than death. Stewie's internal struggles with his identity, as seen in the meta reboots and various generational portrayals, suggest a character always grappling with who he is, beyond his primary obsession. But for Stewie, killing Lois isn't always about a single, violent act. It's an evolving strategy that can encompass insidious attacks on her relationships, her stability, and even her spirit. Our journey concludes with Season 21, Episode 1, an episode that comprehensively uncovers Stewie's evolving methods, from direct violence to insidious attacks on Lois's relationships and familial stability. This episode, titled The Lois Quagmire, unfolds as a series of movie parodies, each offering a different lens through which to view the dynamics of the Griffin family, and, critically, the various ways Lois's life can be killed or profoundly altered. The first segment is a parody of The Silence of the Lambs. Lois is cast as Clarice Starling, an FBI agent in training, while Stewie takes on the chilling role of Hannibal Lecter. From his glass-enclosed cell, Stewie Lecter acts as a master manipulator, providing cryptic clues and engaging Lois in psychological mind games. He orchestrates events, even escaping his confinement, by subtly tricking a guard and disguising himself in the guard's skin. Lois is forced into a dangerous confrontation with Chris, who embodies Buffalo Bill, ultimately leading her to shoot and kill him. The segment ends with Stewie, now free, making a menacing phone call to Lois from a tropical bar, declaring, "I'm having an old friend for dinner." This isn't about direct physical violence from Stewie, but about his capacity for psychological torture and his ability to put Lois in situations where she is forced to commit violence, directly attacking her moral and emotional stability. Next, the episode shifts to a parody of American Beauty. Peter is Lester, experiencing a midlife crisis and obsessing over a blonde cheerleader, while Lois, as Carolyn Burnham, embarks on a secret affair with Quagmire. Chris, as a drug dealer, further contributes to the family's disintegration. This segment meticulously portrays the erosion of Lois's marriage and familial stability. Her affair, Peter's emotional detachment, and Chris's descent into drug use all represent a profound killing of the family unit, leaving Lois emotionally vulnerable and her world in disarray. Stewie, though a minor character in this parody, as one of the observing gay neighbors, is a silent witness to the breakdown of Lois's most cherished relationships, absorbing lessons on how to dismantle a life from within. Finally, the episode presents a parody of Forrest Gump. Peter is Forrest, and Lois is Jenny. This segment follows their lives, from childhood friendship to adulthood. Lois Jenny eventually becomes ill, misheard by Peter as having mermaids. She introduces Peter to their son, a small boy with Stewie's head, before ultimately dying. This scenario presents a different kind of killing of Lois, a natural demise outside of Stewie's direct violent actions. Yet, Stewie is still present as her son, inheriting a world where Lois is gone, but not by his hand. It's a what if, where he is still part of the family's new structure, a chilling testament to his enduring presence, regardless of how Lois's life ends. The cumulative effect of these parodies is a startling revelation of Stewie's multifaceted approach to Lois's demise. He isn't limited to ray guns and rocket ships. He is a master of psychological manipulation, capable of pushing Lois to the brink and forcing her into morally compromising situations. He also observes and potentially orchestrates the slow, insidious destruction of her emotional world, her marriage, and her family's stability. And even in scenarios where Lois meets a natural end, Stewie is still there, a constant fixture in the evolving narrative of the Griffin family. This episode unequivocally shows that Stewie's methods of killing Lois have evolved far beyond simple physical violence. He understands that true destruction can be achieved by unraveling her sanity, dismantling her relationships, and eroding her sense of security. The numerous scenarios presented are not just comedic sketches. They are a chilling playbook, illustrating the many ways Stewie could achieve his ultimate goal, leaving Lois not just physically absent, but utterly broken, her spirit extinguished, and her world irrevocably shattered. This profound understanding of destruction makes him an even more terrifying and effective villain. From his earliest, chilling declarations to the meticulous simulation of her demise, Stewie's quest to kill Lois is a journey into the depths of obsession. But as we've uncovered, her ultimate death may not be a single, violent act, but an unsettling, endless unraveling of her very existence, leaving us to wonder what truly defines him without her.